put a fine point on that, the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime estimates that human trafficking generates $32 billion annually. This is big business. It's the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. The tragedy of modern day slavery through human trafficking afflicts more than 20 million people, women and girls around the world. As we continue this conversation, you are free to take it anywhere you want to, but I would like you to talk about some of the initiatives. You've heard about women work. What else is going on in this movement that can be informative to our audience? What's going on at the national level, what's going on at the state level, in the human rights spheres? Starting with.
I work for the United States Attorney, Sally Yates, and so my background, I'm definitely newer to the area than my counterparts here who've worked so long and so diligently on this critical issue. So my work is primarily in the area of law enforcement and prosecution. From our perspective, one of our main challenges has really been the issue of detection. It was easy when you would have victims walking the streets, as they call it, the track. It's easy to see a girl who looks a little out of place, who might be scantily dressed, and it's 3 in the morning and they're just loitering on the corner. That's the victim that's easier to identify. But now the face of the business has changed such that the traffickers at least believe that they've gotten a little smarter. And what they try to do is to move their business to the virtual world. Most of the trafficking that we're working on now is trying to occur on the internet. Websites that you may be familiar with, like Craigslist, but another website that you hopefully are so familiar with, like Backpage.com, where women are exploited virtually, and they're going to houses, hotels, going to various parties, and being exploited in that way. And it's hard for us to find them when they're being moved from one apartment to the other. So what the federal government is doing in key cities that have been identified as, unfortunately identified as sex trafficking clubs, and Atlanta is one of them, we have created what is called ACT teams. And what it means is that you have federal law enforcement officers from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they work with local law enforcement to do a better job at drilling down and identifying, and most importantly, locating these victims. Local law enforcement, before they were actively engaged in human trafficking and understanding how the crime worked, would actually arrest the victim. They would arrest the individual that they believed to be a prostitute worthy of persecution. But now what we're doing is, because these local law enforcement officers are working with federal agents, now they're educated and they know how the crime works. And so we're creating these collaborative teams, and this is being funded by the federal government, so that we're doing a better job of really finding out and figuring out where the crime occurs. So that's one of the major things that we're doing in the area of prosecution. And then the other is just continuing, this occurs more at the DOJ territorial level, is really working with Congress to make sure that the penalties associated with this crime reflect its seriousness. There is the Trafficking and Victims of Persons Act was initially passed in 2000, the TVPA. And that was a particular statute that was focused on sentencing traffickers. But the sentences weren't as serious as you would find with things like gun crimes and with things like narcotics crimes. Over the past 12 years, that has changed. Now, if you traffic one child under the age of 18, I'm giving you a mandatory minimum of 15 years. And guess what? You don't even have to plead someone to put her on the street. If you recruit her, if you duped her, if you hit her one time, if you drove her there, I'm still giving you 15 years. And this goes to Ms. Richardson this is where it hurts. Demand is one side and supply is the other. The demand piece, at least in the federal side, is difficult because some districts have tried to prosecute what we call the Johns or the clients, and those convictions have been overturned or the cases have been dismissed. So we're going to have to do more work there. We're on the supply side, at least federally, and we're working with local law enforcement on that as well. We are adopting a lot of cases that may not have gotten a lot of time in the state court so that we can really help folks in the public understand that this is a serious crime and very serious consequences.
There are 3 initiatives that I'm working on I would like to share with you because it does have, it can be replicated, but it's also a niche or advocacy. The first one has to do with the public awareness. As a result of the good work that has been done in Georgia, particularly by 2 colleagues who are here in this audience with the organization Youth Spark, Sharon Joseph, this executive director over there at table, and Jennifer Swain here, who works directly with the young women. There has been a toolkit developed that you'll see there that shows how communities can use their tools to organize themselves, to raise public awareness, to educate law enforcement, and to advocate for good public policy. So that's one way that you can, with whatever sphere that you work in and have influence, you can organize so that you can accelerate the efforts of what's happening here with the Future Not a Past that has trained over 3,500 officers in 51 counties in the state of Georgia. We can replicate that, so that's one thing. The second one is, as a result of the work of a Future Not a Past, there are 8 other states in this country that are using that toolkit to organize their communities around that. So if you know people who live in other communities outside of Georgia, the toolkit is available to them and it's free. The third thing is, I know that everyone in this room is thrilled with the re-election of our president. But let me tell you the heart that this man has. For 2 years, we have been working to get the Congress to fix the Trafficking Against Persons Act. That act was passed during the Bush administration and was totally focused for victims outside the United States. The young women that Judge Hickson saw in the courtroom, that you see in trying to first prosecute and Lisa serves, are not eligible for any services. So we introduced a new legislation which they refused to pass that would provide services to domestic victims. A group of us went to the White House and talked to the administration about this travesty. And it was because of that last month, our president issued an executive order to bypass that pollution. But in that order, he ordered that the departments under his administration work together to move money, move resources so these young women can be taken care of. For instance, Lisa has to raise about $6,000 a month to work with one young woman. She receives no state funding, no federal funding for this. However, if she was working with victims who came in from outside the United States, she would be flooded with thousands of dollars. We have got to fix that. These are our girls. Like you said, it could be our daughters. So that is something that we have to hold the Congress accountable for, because these young women need a host of services to restore and repair their lives. So again, the 3 things is to use the toolkit in order to replicate this throughout the United States and through other people that you know, as well as other communities. 2, to demand that Congress do the right thing. And then the third thing has to relate to the whole internet. The majority of trafficking that is taking place now is being done on the virtual streets. Backpage.com makes $24 million in ads that are placed by the trafficker as well as the men who are looking for girls. You could not place an ad paper advertising the sale of crack cocaine? How can that page advertise for the selling of human beings? Congress has not touched it because of the Communications Decency Act, but that is a federal crime. Slavery was outlawed 150 years ago. So that's the other thing. These internet sites whose sole purpose is the selling of human beings need to go. Thank you.
The reason for the forum is obviously to raise public awareness about among a group of women, primarily women, although let's still men too. A group of women who can get things done. And we have heard from some of the panelists some of the things that we can do. Among the things that we want to recognize is that there are some business initiatives coming from the corporate sector that are supporting these efforts, and many of you either have work or are associated with major corporations and businesses. And there are two organizations that I become familiar with. One is called End Child Prostitution, Child Pornography, and Trafficking International. And the other is the Global Business Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And in associating yourself with those organizations, you agree within your own business to establish ethical policy regarding commercially sexual exploitation of children, train your personnel, introduce into your contracts and your contractors language that repudiates the commercial sale and exploitation of children, provide information to your customers, provide information to local authorities, and to report annually. So I recommend on the report annually. Once people leave today, where can they find out more about this, the movement to end and eliminate the commercial trafficking of girls and women? Can someone give us some ideas about how can we follow up? Any one of you, please.
One point I want to piggyback on what you said there, and that is there's an organization that has what is called the ECPAT agreement, EPCAT. EPCAT. And they have gone out to the travel industries and said, will you sign this agreement that A, you would not allow any of this activity to take place in your hotels, 2, will you train your employees so that they can recognize it. If you go on their website, you would be surprised at who is not there. So I suggest that we all look at that website, and if you're about to book a conference or a dinner, if they're not on there, if you ask them why, and more importantly, not support their work.
One of the, you introduced Scarlett Presley Brown from Delta Airlines is one of the early designers and one of the founding members, and I'm sure there's some other companies that you know. Yes.
There were two things I wanted us to cover as we're coming to a close. One has to do with prevention efforts. We have the Youth Spark here, and they have a program, it's the Voices program, which is a prevention program, which is another opportunity for those of us who are here to get involved in preventing the problem. And you can go on the website of Youth Spark and talk to Jennifer Swain, who's here, about that particular program. But that is preventive. That's where we're doing education with younger people to try to prevent them from making the mistakes or from making the decisions that lead them into this. The second thing I want to segue into is Lisa Williams' discussion about what Living Waters is doing in terms of developing a resource center.
when we were rescuing girls and providing them with their mental and physical and educational needs, we realized that it wasn't enough when they were 17 and 18 years of age, and we were returning them back to the community. And so we wanted to do something more for them and also reach the young women, because now we're talking 18, 19, 20, who did not have an opportunity to come into our program. Because the long and short of it is that they're being trafficked right in this area as well. And they don't see any hope for something different. So we've been afforded an opportunity, primarily because of Stacy Johnson here, to get an opportunity to have a 2,000 square foot space in downtown Atlanta. This is huge because we're going to be located in the area most impacted by trafficking every single day. While 85% of it is taking place over the internet, we still have some pockets where you can see our girls out on the streets. And so we're going to be right there in the middle of the hub, offering to these girls and young women GED and high school services for them, and vocational programs, as well as entry into 5 colleges that have partnered with us to give them a whole What is so important about that is that in the state of Georgia now, entering in college, you have to have a background check. Well, all of our girls just about have a criminal record. So, if I apply for college, they're going to find out about who I am, Miss Lisa. They're going to make fun of me, and I'm going to run. And I'm going to run back to the strip club. I'm going to put myself on the internet at this time because what other alternatives do I have? Well, these colleges who have partnered with us have said, you certify these girls, there's no background checks, so no one will ridicule them. That's huge. We partnered with Dr. Nancy Barr out of Peachtree City. She's an ophthalmologist, and she's doing a 4-month, this is really important, a 4-month vocational program with these young girls, so that in the end of 4 months, they will have a full-time job. We have ophthalmologists lining up for our daughters in a good way. They will have a full-time job starting off anywhere between $12 and $25 an hour. That's a living wage. That's a living wage. And so when we say that rescue is not a singular act, this is a part of it. We must do these kinds of things. We're excited about the new partnerships with businesses in the community that have said, count us in. We'll offer apprenticeships to these girls, Lisa. So what we need from you all, we need mentors. But we only need mentors who are connected to the cause, who can say, I'm not going to judge you for what has happened to you or the choices that you have made in despair. But I can walk alongside of you, offering some guidance and input and my experience and encouragement so that you can reach back and grab the next girl so that she won't become a victim. The preventive side is key, because we cannot build enough safe refuge in any community, nor do every girl that is rescued need to be in a safe home. She sometimes simply needs the right type of wraparound services put in place in her community. Because what some of us think is always the parent's fault that this occurs, and this is not so. I want you to understand that there are people, men and women, trolling our internet, looking for vulnerable girls. This is a full-time job for them. I trust me. They have earned their PhD in how to detect these girls. Now, I have young girls, 12, 13, 14, that was befriended by an 18-year-old woman. who they met at the mall. And on that second time, she's introduced them to her boyfriend, who is truly the trafficker or the pimp, who will soon be the daddy. That child here in Atlanta and in the suburbs around this area generally has a nightly quota of $1,000 on her, nightly. The average trafficker has 6 girls, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. $1,000, 6 girls, that's $6,000 one night. They don't get a night off. That's $180,000 in 1 month he's making on the backs and the knees of these girls. We must stand up. We must tell everyone we know about this, our daughters, our nieces, and our sons. We cannot leave the boys and the men out of this equation. See, we can't do that. While men and women both are recruiting over the internet, boys and men are raping our girls. And if that young boy, your son, my sons, I have 2 of them, don't respect themselves, we cannot expect them to respect our daughters. We must bring them to the table, because for all the men who are doing the wrong things, there are good men who want to stand up and say, count me in on this fight.